Hello, I'm Steve. A little about myself. I'm a retired law enforcement officer with 20 years of service. I began my career in the jail, worked the road, and became an investigator. During my career, my training consisted of everything from SWAT to becoming a state certified crime scene technician. I've investigated crimes from thefts to homicides. After retiring and becoming aware of true crime and web sleuths, I started my channel for web sleuths to better understand the perspectives of law enforcement. Not only do we cover true crime, I go out into the field and assist families who have lost loved ones to homicide and their cases are considered cold. Join me as we look and bring attention to these critical cases.
Hello, everyone. Glad you're able to join us tonight. If you're new to the channel, welcome. And while you're in chat, if you have any questions, throw them in there. Normally, Mrs. Steve is, or rather recently, Mrs. Steve is with me occasionally and does the questions for within chat, but she's not tonight. We're getting ready to go back on the road, and I have a special guest that will be assisting me on and going out and regarding the Evansdale homicides, which we'll be getting more into the details of that case of up in Iowa regarding Elizabeth and Lyric. But with that being said, let me bring in my partner in crime here. Hello, sir.
Your esteemed guest is
Yeah.
what I like to be called. Esteemed
guest, Ruckus. Ruckus, if you would, before we get further much into this, let people know that might be new to you and your channel or to you, your background and a little bit about yourself there, sir.
Yeah. I've had a YouTube channel about 2 years now. I started out about a week or two, or maybe a little bit later than that, before Richard Allen was arrested. So around that time frame. And I bounced around a little bit and started my own channel. I'm retired law enforcement from Florida. But as you can tell, I do not have a Florida accent. I have a Boston accent. I grew up in Boston. And I was fortunate enough to meet Mr. Steve through YouTube. And, we became good friends and we started doing things together and looking at cases together. And I've been fortunate enough for him to invite me to come on the road with him several times. And we've had a great time. Now, he lies a lot about, my activities. And I just wanted to say real quick, I seen Gail is in the chat. Gail, thank you so much for that walking stick. Steve delivered it to me personally, and it's perfect. Thank you.
Yes. We have police escort and everything. Honor guard was there during the presentation.
Make a hole.
Yeah.
It's like you were delivering an organ to someone. Yeah.
But anyway, tonight, Ruckus and I will be traveling up to Iowa for a case that I was working and have been working for quite a while. I brought Ruckus on board for several different reasons, but also to get his opinion and thought process. And while working this case and introducing Ruckus to some of the families that I work with, and I want to thank my community and the foundation and everyone that supports this channel for the fact that this is, at the end of the day, what this channel has evolved into, having the abilities to go out and work with these cold case families, developing new leads as best as we can from the information and the opportunity that we have when we travel to these locations of interviews, looking at the crime scenes. And of course, we forward everything to law enforcement so that they can follow up on whatever we can develop. But through this, I discovered a superpower of Ruckus. Ruckus has the ability of that when he meets these families, he is able, his communication skills are out of this world. I know you might see him through his lives sometimes that he's rough around the edges. That is not the case when it's one-on-one and he's being compassionate and speaking with these families. And so that is something I wish everyone would recognize about Ruckus. And I've had to see it firsthand. But now he does have his dark side also, that whenever we go to and I become a designated driver for him and for other individuals as we meet with them and everything. But he is an asset that I want to thank everyone, and I wanted to make sure everyone realized that about him, because he may try to be hard-nosed, but he's not that way all the time. And whereas my communication skills, I'm more along the analytical strategies and working crime scenes and stuff. And I try my best, but I'm an amateur when it comes to communicating with some of these families. When you put myself up against someone like what Ruckus brings to the table. So for that, Ruckus, I wish to thank you.
You're welcome. Every once in a while, my Irish heritage rears its ugly head, but for the most part, I behave.
Okay. Well, we're going to be traveling up there. I've got some cases I'm going to be working across the country as I go up, and then I will be meeting Ruckus up in Iowa, picking him up at airport, and we'll be. I think we're spending 5 days in the area, working some angles regarding the Evansdale homicides. And if you don't know about this case, every year they have a memorial ride for Elizabeth and Lyric. And this is the two young Lyric Cook, Marcy, and Elizabeth Collins. We have a special relationship with Elizabeth Collins' father, Drew, a remarkable man who has fought a tremendous fight for justice, has been across on numerous interviews with multiple creators out there. And he's extremely humble. And it's just a tragedy to see these families. And but out of these tragedies, these families build relationships with other families and support groups. And through those support groups, that's how we've met other families and further our cause as far as working cold cases. But originally, these two young children, back on July the 13th of 2012, were abducted from a popular park, walking trail, bike trail within Evansdale. And then, unfortunately, 5 months later, their bodies were found in a adjoining county, 20-something miles away. And that's the storyline. And if you're unfamiliar with this, you can type in the Evansdale homicides, Elizabeth Collins and Lyric Cook, and you will see this story. And while Ruckus and I have spent hours at both locations, the abduction site and the recovery site of where they found the victims, and that's the things we're going to be discussing tonight. And so this, of course, is Myers Lake, is now known as Angel Park. The work that the families have done and the city has allowed and what they've created out here is Memorial Park, not just for Lyric and Elizabeth, but for a lot of families. They just recently, I think it was last year, when they put in for Amber, Larry's daughter, they put a memorial there. I think it was last year when they planted a tree.
Yeah, they planted a tree and put a plaque in.
Yeah. But Ruckus, you've been here to the abduction site. What are your thoughts about the circumstances that will have led to this abduction?
The spot down in the bottom right-hand corner where you can, Steve's identified it as the abduction site. And looking at it from this view, even from ground level, it's hard to really get a grasp of what a choke point that is. If you were going to abduct somebody and you were afraid that they were going to try to abscond, that would be the place to do it, in that park. That's the only place where you could do that. Yeah, and this is part of that area. And while we were there, Steve even pointed out, right where they found the bikes in the abduction area, you see the chain link fence. Well, there's a gate to get at some type of a water filtration system on the other side of the fence. Steve opened that gate, and he was able to almost touch the other fence, couldn't you, with your arms? So, I mean, it's a perfect spot if you didn't want somebody to get by. And it was a lot more secluded back then. Now they've thinned out some of the trees, and they've done some work on it. Oh, that was a Bigfoot sighting. I just saw Bigfoot real quick. But, and also this, you can see this highway, which is pretty close. And at the day of the abduction, that was being worked on, and traffic was down to 35 or 40 miles an hour. And there was actually a gentleman who seen the girls riding their bikes a little bit more to the north end of the park. So he actually could see them. But when this, there's no foliage here right now, but in July, these trees all have leaves on them. It'd be a perfect spot to do that. And that leads me to believe that the perpetrator or perpetrators, they knew this. They've looked at this location, and they're also very familiar with the site where they found the girls.
Yeah, just right ahead of us is where the gate probably. You can see the little out in the water. You see a little, almost like a little peninsula walkway area where that filtration system is. But this gate up here that we're approaching, on one side of the fence is where a purse and phone that belonged to Elizabeth was found, that they had put over the top of the. Right here are those double gates. You can open that gate, swing it out halfway across the trail. And not only that, but where these gates are located, on each side of you is an incline that if anyone, such as a small child, was to come down into this area, that the only way that they would be able to escape a initial contact would be they would have to pedal uphill. Was this part of the offender's plan? Absolutely could have been. Now, what you see now, as far as being clear, this isn't the same terrain that was there. Drew and them went in and they cleaned out, and it's a lot more open for several reasons. And that being that they, of course, don't want anyone to be isolated out of view, and they cleaned it up quite a bit so that the possible potential of another crime occurring in that area was greatly lessened.
And the vegetation was pretty thick. The purse was actually being held up off the ground by the vegetation. So they weren't trees by any stretch. They were like bushy type vegetation. But they've since cleaned all of that out. Again, I'll get some more videos when we go out the next 10, 15 days to see what it looks like now, but a lot different. What month did you get this video in?
I went out there. I think this was either December or February. I went out and did it. I've got some under full foliage that we will do in a future show, but this show here, I wanted to do it where it was low foliage. But let me go through chat here and see who's out here. Hello, Marion. Good to see you. BG. There's Jill. There's Nana 73. Gail Hurd. Yes, Gail. Thank you for the walking stick. Mrs. Steve. First comment was that, hey, I could hit somebody with this. And then
we can sword fight.
yeah. You give Mrs. Steve a stick, and the martial arts training comes right to the top. CJK, good to see you. Sherry Faye, excellent. Olivia 2. Let's see, Sensei. Just checking up. If you got any questions about this, absolutely throw them in the chat, and I'll try to get to all of them as we can. Hello, Pitbull Mom. Brenda, excellent to see you. Jill, Philip Bray. Let's see here. Elevate the process. And there's a name I have no idea how to. I'm sure it's any idea of how to.
Au revoir, Delulu Bishes.
Yeah, that's about as good butchering as we can.
Actually, I think I did pretty good on that.
Yeah, you did really well. Yeah. There's Stacy. Excellent to see you. Nanar. This is true, Nanar. We discussed this actually on our last trip, that you don't get the name Ruckus without a cause in effect. Hello, Mustang 65. Good to see you.
Most stories are embellished, though. Boston. Not just from Steve. From the second I was born, I'm a delight. I just don't get it.
He's perfect. Oh yeah. That's right. I heard that every morning. I'm perfect. Leanne, good to see you. Try not to get too far behind. I stay behind. Some people can handle this chat, I mean, seamlessly. I'm not one of those. This
Yeah,
Google
I'm with
machine.
you, brother. I get so far behind, it's crazy.
Joanne Jackson, good to see you. Brandon, also. Gibbo, good to see you. Mitzi. And just making sure Southern Gals here. Evening, Mr. Stephen. I'm late. Just got home from work and had some supper. Glad you were able to join us. Check out Southern Gal True Crime. She has a great channel also.
She sure does.
Mm-hmm. They do tremendous work. They bring so much awareness to all these other cases. Olivia, too. I shouldn't say it, but I can't believe this case is still unsolved. Well, that is there a possibility it could be solved? Absolutely. What evidence does law enforcement have? We don't know. This case, probably one of the, Drew, upon speaking with him, he'll tell you that they're extremely tight with information. Everything that we send is one way, guys. We don't get any feedback whatsoever on whatever ground that we cover and whoever we talk to and whatever tips come in. When we send it in, it goes one way. And can it be solved? I absolutely believe so. What do you think, Ruck?
Absolutely. It's going to be solved. But I understand, as do you, why it's all one way. They're not going to share anything with us. I don't blame them. I wouldn't either,
Let me finish this one while it's playing. And I'm going to go through chat, look for anything. If you got anything to comment on while we go through this, Ruckus, go ahead. Talk about
Sure.
the trail, right?
On one of the Discords that I go in, we were talking about people that want to send a personal message to Drew. They could DM it to me, email it to me. If you just want to email me a personal message, I'll let Drew read them all, watch the videos, listen to the audios, just so he can see how many people actually care and, are pulling for this case to be solved. Drew's one of the nicest guys, I've ever met. And I got to meet, the same time I got to meet Larry Crum. He's another great guy. It's a pleasure helping these folks. It really is. These victims' families they're at their wits' end. It's good for them to have people that they can bounce things off of and talk to, and to see that there's some effort being put into these cases. Law enforcement is probably working very diligently on it, but they're not sharing because they don't want to screw their case up, and I understand that. Hey, wait a minute. That's not a Pacifica.
No, that's well. There's Drew gets a special privilege. He drives down through these trails, and so he drove me back there. The first time I went back there, he called the law enforcement, and of course, got his permission to be able to go back there because I think it was pretty freezing that day. But
I'm going to type my email into the chat, Steve.
Sure.
So anybody that wants to send a personal message for Drew and Larry, we're going to get to see Larry as well. That's Amber Crum's dad.
Yes.
If there's anything you'd like to pass along, it'll make them feel like it's more personal than me just saying, "Hey, everybody said hello," So I'm going to throw if you don't mind, Steve, if I put
Absolutely.
my email in.
And absolutely. Hello, Tony and Marion Tate. Thank you. Says Barbara Hall said hello. If y'all are unaware of who Barbara Hall is, she's the mother of Timmy Dees. There's another cold case or another case that we're looking at, and I've been working on. And so if you look up the Timmy Dees case, you'll see what her fight for justice has been. Absolutely amazing. What all these families go through, and hats off to her.
Yeah, it's difficult for us as well. Sometimes we find things out or we figure things out and we can't share either. Sometimes, I don't do many lives because there's really not much that I can say yet about these cases that I find very interesting and very solvable. That's why we put so much time and effort into it. But we can't really say too much. You do
Yeah,
not
there's a
want
lot
to
of
mess up
stuff.
an investigation.
There's Morgan LaFay Stephanie. Hello from Wisconsin. Good to see you. That's a new one too. I hadn't seen.
Now, Wisconsin just had a dam break.
Yeah, I saw where they had was letting the families get back home after they had warned them to evacuate.
That's the nice thing about Florida, Steve. It can rain 12 inches of rain in an hour, and 10 minutes later it's gone. This is just a sandbar, goes right down to it.
Nana 73. I don't know how all that super stickers work, but there's several options, and I appreciate your support. And I appreciate everybody's support for the likes, the sharing, and of course, any type of donation either through the YouTube or through our True Crime Web Foundation, which is you go to truecrimeweb.com. There's a link there for the foundation, which is a nonprofit. And so we appreciate any and all support. It means a lot to these families, and which without that support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. Frederick, how is this case ever going to get solved? It's like all cases. At some point, there's several different avenues. Can we have that there's advancements in science? Is there some type of evidence that hasn't been processed that they may have? Is there partial DNA that may exist that technologies just hadn't gotten to that point? Is there a witness out there that has firsthand knowledge that hasn't reached out to law enforcement at this point? Or will it be, even from a deathbed confession? There's a lot of different ways of how cases get solved. It could be from another inmate that may have served time. Ruckus can tell you about where inmates that serve time with each other may share information. And when there's time to work a deal, what do these inmates do, Ruckus?
Sing like a canary. They tell on each other. They can't wait to snitch. They can't wait. Now, another thing too, Steve, to mention about that, these cases being solvable, is sometimes we just got to wait for technology to catch up. And you have to ensure that the evidence that you send gets processed the way you want to process. How many times did you send that airbag in, Steve?
It was 4 or 5 times. And, it was just so aggravating because I knew that airbag. And that's the thing that when we see these other cases and people jump to the conclusion where they tested that clothing, they tested that article, doesn't matter if it's Delphi or otherwise, you can't see the DNA. And until you get to that specific one spot where that transfer contact was made, and Lacar's exchange principle is solid, and it's proven time and time again. And even with the technologies and the DNA as we move forward, it's going to be, do I think at some point in the future that we'll be able to look at clothing, and just like we can use certain chemicals to identify certain body fluids with contact on clothing or on bodies or on any surface. I look forward to the day, and I think at some point they will be able to develop some type of technology that can look at and identify proteins and things on clothing, or even the DNA profiles that what could that be? Well, if you can imagine it, someone out there is working on it, and I think it will come at some point. It may not be, most certainly won't be in my lifetime, but hopefully it will be in our children's lifetime.
Now, there's a few folks, a few of you members that have an anniversaries. If you want to flick that blue light, I'll read them for you. We got Sensei Wackadoodle, been a member for 19 months. Thank you both for all you do. Then we have Josh the Posh, member for 20 months, getting close to a 2-year webiversary.
Yes.
You got some great members. And Olivia, too, member for 15 months.
Thank
you guys are fantastic.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Like I said, I wouldn't be able to do this without them. It's absolutely amazing.
And then we've got Mother of Dragons with a $4.99 super sticker. Thank you very much, Mother of Dragons.
There we go.
And I've mentioned this before. You and I share a lot of the same subscribers. Most of them came to me from you, and I thank you for that. But I see them around in other chats, and they ask intelligent questions. They pick up on things that you lay down, and they do a great job with retaining information, and they really care. So it's evident. And how long they've been members, not just subscribers, members. You got another super sticker too.
Oh, okay. Gibble says, so they have something in Ruckus Rock. Sounds promising. You know, we know what we have provided to them, but do they have other evidence? Law enforcement absolutely knows far more about this case than anyone, any YouTuber out there, including myself. Now, I don't know what Ruckus knows, because Ruckus is his own independent creator and investigator. But
I got to save content for my channel sometimes, you know.
Yeah, he's saving stuff for his, and so. I would be disappointed if he knew some huge element that he hadn't shared with me yet.
I would share with you, you know that. I'd have to run it by you to see if it's any good. I love when you call me or text me or message me and you start off with, "Let me run something by you." I'm like, here we go. Now we're gonna have a conversation.
I have a question here. It says, Steve, who's the guy who saw the girls riding a bike, and was he fully questioned? The guy that he was traveling, if you'll see from this slide here, last sighting, this individual was traveling down the interstate, going from bottom of the screen to the top of the screen, when he saw two young children on bikes heading towards the abduction point. He lived straight across from the lake, and from where he was on the road. He lived on he lived within this community, and yes, he was fully questioned. Has since passed. He's deceased now, but from my understanding, speaking with Drew, they know who he was. He was, he was a critical part of the timeline, and was, as being one of the last persons to see them, was questioned in depth. What does law enforcement and what were their findings? We have no idea, or I don't have any idea. Now, law enforcement does.
They know a lot more.
Hello, Charlotte. Good to see you.
Now, that gentleman that saw them on the bikes, he was affectionately known as Santa Claus. He had a big white beard. Mm-hmm. Everybody knew him.
True Crime, $20. Thank you for some of our mutual community. Thank you. Appreciate that. We're going to be on the road, and we will use that. I can't remember what day you're flying in on the 11th, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. And Sensei Wackadoodle gifted a True Crime membership. Thank you so much. I hope I get it. Fingers crossed. I hope I get it.
Yes. Thank you, Sensei. And then Mitzi has been a member for 16 months. Thank you for all you do, Mr. Stephen Ruckus. Thank you for your support. All right. Let's see. Trying to get this thing going again. Yeah.
But we've got we have a lot to do on several of these cases that we're laying the foundation for now. And there's going to be something come out of it. If nothing else, law enforcement is going to be aware that we're looking at it. And sometimes that's enough to just give them a little nudge. Like that case we were talking about with the airbag. We were talking to some retired detectives, and they're having the same problem with some of their cases, older cases with DNA, where they're not testing them the way they wanted them tested. And that happens a lot. People don't understand how often that stuff happens.
Molly says, True Crime Web, for you and Ruckus as retired law enforcement, if you find something that seems to be evidence, can you send it off to get testing on your own, or do you have to turn it over to LE? LE sometimes are of limited resources. And as Ruckus just mentioned, we spoke to some retired law enforcement, and they also, when you send it in, just like I was frustrated with that airbag, having to send it back to the same place, and it being the definition of insanity, getting the same results time and time again because they were testing the same thing and not testing areas I wanted tested that wasn't blood. I didn't want blood tested. I wanted a different coloration and part of the airbag tested that had a different tone to it, as far as it came from the road rash, as far as when the human contacted it, and it took layers of skin off of the offender. And once they understood that, and once they saw the different coloration of what I wanted tested, they tested it, and of course it popped up. But it's sometimes it happens not just with that case, but these other retired officers, they have the same thing. And these departments, not everyone has unlimited resources as far as testing. And the labs, they're backed up. And so will they put something that's 30 years old or 20 years old or 10 years old at the top of the list? No, it falls in line. It may be years before they can get to that stuff. And so,
and it's not one-on-one like you see on TV, guys. You drop off the evidence. You don't talk to the technician specifically that's going to be working on that. You don't know who's doing it.
Yeah,
you got a couple more super stickers and anniversaries.
Yeah. On the GBI, on them, they finally got so frustrated with me that they did let me get to one of the technicians. That I'm sure they just did that to finally shut me up, but it worked.
Well, it's frustrating, isn't it?
Yes.
And it was there. It was right where you said it would be.
Yes. I mean, and that's something else that I have a red-green deficiency, and I see things. And that's the thing, is that people can look at any photograph. They can look at any article of clothing, and we all see different things. We see different shades. To me, it stood out. To them, it didn't, until they were looking at the blood, and you can get tunnel vision and the training. And is that what happened? I don't know, but I know that at the end of the day, we were able to identify a felon that had fled the United States through his DNA profile. And I believe that will work for a lot of different cases, because, like I said, Ruckus and I, we spent several hours together the other day analyzing some crime scene photos, and on a case that we're getting ready to present to the proper authorities with a new narrative, and hopefully that case will move forward in the coming days. But and it's things like that, like I said, when we look at things, we try to look at it with a new set of eyes, and because people look at things and evaluate things in totally different ways. And even with the Evansdale homicides, same thing. We tried to come up with new ways of developing leads, and who knows? We may get lucky. Hello, Al on the prowl. Good to see you.
You've got a few more donations.
Okay. Hello, Charlotte. Good to see you.
I'm not as good as Mrs. Steve is, but I'm trying to help.
Yes. I'm sure you and her share a lot of the similar hair products.
And listen, don't you worry about that red and green deficiency. I'll let you know when the traffic lights are red and green.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to, you can trust me. You can't worry about it.
Sensei gifted 1 True Crime Web membership. Thank you. And Mitzi, appreciate it. And I think I got Southern Gal while ago, but in case I didn't, $20. Thank you. And Mitzi, $5 super sticker. Appreciate your support. That'll get me and Ruckus a cup of coffee, and we appreciate that. Gail Hurd, been a member for 11 months. Thank you. And Josh Posh, I've got to step out tonight. Look forward to the replay. Thank you, Ruckus, for his kind words in the live. $5. Thank you, Josh. And Nana, 73, $50 super sticker. Thank you. That's very kind of you. Appreciate your support. Let's see here. Get back up here, figure out where I'm at.
Now we've got this trip. We're
Yeah.
going to the last trip we were in working so many cases, and the logistics is what's hard. We're at the mercy sometimes of the people we're meeting with, waiting for them to return calls and stuff like that. And that's why Steve drives the amount of hours that he does. He wants to make sure he's within earshot. Because one, we waited, and it wasn't until the last minute it fell through. We couldn't get to the property, but we're at their mercy, to be honest with you, when we're out there on the road like that.
Yeah, this coming up trip, like I said, as I travel up, I try to almost, make my travels where I work multiple cases, because, like I said, even with the funding that we have, I try to stretch every dollar I can, and I've got to be in a couple of different cities between now and when I pick Ruckus up on the 11th, and so I've got like four or five meetings between now and then, and so we stay busy, and I've got to cover a lot of miles. I carry a lot of equipment, which Ruckus can attest to.
Yeah, I got to fight with it every time I open the sliding glass doors. I get attacked by mannequins, shovels, which is a little bit concerning when the first thing I see is a shovel. There's a question here from Owl on the Prowl, Danger Dave, and James Tate followed up with it.
Okay.
The bikes, the pictures that I saw, the bikes were leaned up against the fence. They were not on their kickstands. I didn't even notice if the kickstands were put down or not, but they were definitely leaned up against the fence.
And Owl on the Prowl brings up another possibility, of course, that sometimes it gets solved from a tip from someone close to the perp. Absolutely. And who knows, but all we can do is bring awareness to it, and we do the best we can with it, and hopefully. Let's see here. She got that good. Hello, I haven't seen you before. Says, hello, when I think about these little girls every day, their case isn't talked about enough. Yes, and we see that across the board. There's a lot of cases out there that we see so much interest in, and then you have some cases that just for whatever reason don't grab the national attention. And and that's where I appreciate all these other channels out there. And there's a lot of great channels out there, guys, that bring attention and awareness to these cases, and my hat's off to them.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I don't mind bringing awareness to cases. I enjoy it. And people interact with it and stuff like that. It's fantastic. But when you can get out there and actually do some work on the locations, and Steve can attest to this, unless you're there, unless you're standing on that ground, you can't really get a feel for what happened. So we kind of play the eyes and ears for you guys. When we get out there, we take as many videos as we can and stuff like that. But it's unless you go and stand there, you know. I remember thinking to myself, man, those hills aren't that steep in Delphi. They sure are. I could have used that walking stick that night.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, rather than stepping on my back. And, Cindy says, were small boats allowed on that water? They searched it with divers, and there were, and there's different types of boats that were on that lake, and you have access to go on that lake with some of the kayaks and things of that nature. So yes,
it was actually a small boat with 3 individuals in it on the lake that day around the time of the abduction. So it's not very big. You're not going to. I don't think you could water ski or anything like that, or take jet skis. But it's a nice little lake. But there was 3 people that were in a boat on the lake that day, and they didn't hear anything. That's another reason that I think that they knew the perp or the perpetrators.
We got Gail said we have another package on the way for Mrs. Stephen Ruckus. Be there first next week. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I hope it's a shield. You gave Steve a stick. I hope it's a shield for me so he can't whack me with his stick.
I hope it's some nice hairbrushes.
Maybe some buffing compound. I can go with the low sheen instead of the high sheen. Maybe I should try that.
True Crime Web, how many samples have you gotten so far? I think we worked in 4 cases. Some of those cases have multiple samples. Some of them have control samples. So we have quite a few, and we anticipate that that's one of the meetings this week. I'm picking up supplies at a university from their lab so that we can get different types of water samples from locations such as wells that could be used as a dump location for some of these victims, which is a different process than the soil samples, but it's still based upon eDNA being in watersheds. So as we go forth, there'll be samples gathered probably for the next year to 2 years as we try to build and see if we can get any results from this technology.
Now, Pitbull Mom asked if R.A. Richard Allen has been considered and ruled out of this crime. I don't know if he's been considered. They're similar, but I don't believe they're connected at all. You would have to have intimate knowledge of both of these areas, and they're pretty far apart from each other. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I created way back before I had visited either location, I think, or I may have visited Delphi. But, if you went and looked at all the similarities, I mean, there's so much out there as far as 2 victims, young girls, is a single offender, double offender, and conditions. Even numerically, there was some type of date that if you reverse the dates or the numbers in the dates, it came from one to the other. And so did law enforcement look at that? Probably so. But each of the locations, you have to be a local with, as Ruckus said, with intimate knowledge. And there's no doubt about the knowledge of 7 Bridges where these victims were found. Because when you get to this location here, and what's your thoughts about this location, Ruckus, where they were found at 7 Bridges?
This is just my opinion now. And this is a good shot of it right here, going towards the crime scene. They had to have walked there. That underbrush and undergrowth and all that in July had to be really thick. So they weren't brought out there at the ATVs or anything like that. And they went into an area where it's remote, but it's also dense. So to me, it's been, they scoped it out first. They planned this whole thing. There's no way that was just a random location that they selected. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you go into this area, the remoteness, and there's only one way in and one way out. And when you arrive at this location, you instantly know everyone that's there. There's the parking place. When you pull into the parking area, you can see the whole, probably 100 yards long, 50 wide. And so you can see if there's any vehicles, if you have any witnesses. And so I believe everyone, as far as law enforcement, is convinced that there is some type of individual that has a link to this area through fishing or hunting and being here.
Absolutely.
And I agree with it, because finding it, there's only one little sign when you're traveling the main road, and this area here is about, I don't know, it's probably 2 miles, at least 2 miles off of the main highway. And there's a little old sign that's about 6 inches by 6 inches that tells you turn right. And that's about it. There's no, without that little sign or knowing of it, you would never locate this. Even if you saw the sign, you wouldn't be able to know the significance of the areas and the remoteness, and that you would have the ability to have that isolation, so as you could commit such a horrible crime and be undisturbed. And that's what these offenders have to have. They have to control time, control victims, and be in a location where they're not exposed to the eyes of others. For the fact that, you let someone like Ruckus or other concerned parents attacking two children, it's not going to work out real well for them.
No. Mm-mm. And I'm going to do a shameless plug here. On my channel, I have a video that I started recording from the abduction site, and we drove all the way to Seven Bridges. So you can go look that, and you can see how isolated it is and how far off of the beaten path that it is. That's some good drone work. I would have crashed mine 5-6 times already.
I crashed it one time. Now, I was flying this. Now, I've since walked it carrying it. I found out that it's less heartbreaking and doesn't take years of your life away when you crash a $1,500 drone.
When I saw you doing that, I got so mad at myself. It's like, why didn't I ever think of that? I'm an idiot,
Missing People says, how strong do you feel about the fact that you can help solve this? It's not so much that we absolutely believe that we are the ones that will solve this. We try to do things, and we try to do this for all the families. And it's the effort that we put in. It's that we have a commitment not only to these families, but to our communities, that we go out there and we do what we say we're going to do, that through your support and stuff, and we go out there and we try. We have these other channels, and I want you to support all these channels out there, not just this one, but these people such as Southern Gal, Mind of Monsters. There's so many of them out there that do good stuff that I'm appreciative of. And, reach out to them, give them those thumbs up, views, and because there's so much, like I said, there's 20 or 30, and I need to do a shout out to all those channels, and I will. But
yeah, they're excellent.
It's the interactions of working with these families, because Ruckus can tell you that when you speak to them, they're absolutely in awe that people that they've never met are behind them, that know their stories, and because they sit there and a lot of them, they have been through so much turmoil and tragedy that they think the world has crumbled, and it has crumbled around them, but they just don't understand that there's so many people that care.
And it's because of you guys, to be honestly. Steve and I happen to be retired. We happen to have some experience and stuff like that. But you guys are what drives us, to go out there and do this stuff, because you take an interest in it. We would be doing it anyway. I'm positive that I would be doing it. I've been looking at cases since I retired. But this platform has opened up a whole new world in this true crime stuff.
Missing People also had a question. How much do you consider the drug dealing doing angles or drug angles? Yes, there was certain individuals. You'll see this in almost all cold cases, that there's always going, and a lot of crimes out there, regardless if it's robberies, abductions, homicides, there's always a drug angle. Is that drug angle absolutely connected to the crime itself? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But it is something that law enforcement will look at and evaluate. And what part and how did law enforcement approach it for this drug angle? I don't know. I know it was something they looked at.
Yeah, they looked hard at that angle.
Hello, Lee and Susan. Good to see you. Let me go back up here right quick.
It's going to be nice. Like I started saying before, that last trip, we were all over the place. The only break we had was waiting 4.5 hours to eat a buffet. But at least this time, we can settle in and work some local stuff. Not getting up and in the van at 7 and then not stop driving till 3 o'clock the next morning. It's going to be nice to be able to get some things done.
But
And if I get in any trouble, there's
and
a nurse in that area that I know that she'll help me out.
Let's see. Let's see here. I'm trying to get my Google machine to work with me again.
It's giving you trouble?
Oh, always. I'm slightly smarter than the chair I'm sitting in. So.
Yeah, you and me both.
Hello, Lynn. Good to see you. Yeah, Al, Ruckus noted about the kickstand, and that's been brought up numerous times about were they laying down, were they set up, who set the bikes up against the fence, and is that something that even a casual walker buyer may have found the bikes, because we know the bikes were found and seen prior to or the firefighter, even his discovery. There was additional people or additional person that said, hey, I came through there at a certain time and I saw those bikes. Because someone else said, while it's a narrow time frame, there is always the possibility of someone seeing the bikes. And, how many times have we moved things out of our way or other people's way in a public area? And could that have happened? Possible, but probably not.
And now they were driving through the neighborhood to get there to the park, and they had to ask directions how to get to the bike trail to get to the park. You have to consider as well that may have been a drop point for the bikes. They may have had a pickup truck or whatever and abducted them in the neighborhood and dropped the bikes there. So they have to look at everything. But with the purse being tossed over the fence, the probability of that's slim to none, and Slim left town. But you have to consider all these things.
Yes, the creepy mannequins are going out on me on this road trip.
He's got some creepy mannequins.
Mrs. Steve says, you're playing with your dolls again? Well, Ruckus, actually, we spent some time playing with the your neighbor came over while we were playing with the mannequins the other day.
Yeah. He mentioned them today. He stopped back today. He's going to put some new blades on my mower for me.
Yeah.
And he said, where's your buddy with his bald mannequins?
Yeah. But great. Yeah, I had forgotten about when he walked in, and Ruckus was introducing him to myself. And then he says, how about the other guy? And I looked over there, and we had him sitting in a chair I had totally forgotten about.
And what's funny is that's totally normal to us. I wouldn't even question that if I came to your house. You could have some artificial blood and everything else all over the table, and I wouldn't even question it. Wouldn't even bat an eye.
Oh yeah, if you come to my house, they will never be able to process my house as a crime scene.
I can imagine your vehicles. If somebody ever stole one of your vehicles, they'd say, this must have been used in a mass homicide.
Yeah, just from cross contaminations.
Yeah.
Oh, me.
But my thoughts on it, Steve, is that at least one of the girls was familiar with at least one of the people that abducted them.
Yeah. Talk some about some of the content that you've created, whereas Drew and you have collaborated in of his visitations to not only to the abduction, but to the crime scene itself.
Yeah, there's been some
recovery site.
Yeah, there's been some subscribers that have been fantastic. They made some dolls and some plaques. And when you pull into this area, it's to where they found the girls at. There's basically one tree. As soon as you pull in between you and there's a creek there as well. It's a river to me. It's a pretty wide creek. So Steve would go there and, place the dolls there and take time to reflect and walk around and try and figure this stuff out. Because, like Steve said, law enforcement's not sharing, and it's heartbreaking. So he goes out there on his own, drives out there. Now, mind you,
Drew, you're not Steve. You mean Drew?
Yeah, I was talking about. Oh, did I say Steve? I
Yeah.
apologize. Yeah, I meant Drew. Now, mind you, Drew had no idea where this place was. None until law enforcement brought him there and showed him. He had no idea where it was. Never been there. And just to go out there and to walk around the area and wonder what happened to your loved one, it really breaks your heart. It does. But he keeps going, just like all of us would. I'm sure all of us would make that trip as much as we could. Anytime we had free time, I would go there.
Alan Prowl is another awesome channel, and one that I need to absolutely recognize of the work that he does. All these channels. Whereas I'm on the road and I don't create as much content regarding some of these cases as I used to, and not able due to our that the cold cases will always play an important part of the rest of my life. And I do that, but these other channels and what they bring to the table, absolutely amazing. Al on the Prowl is another one of those channels. Like I said, there's so many out there that it's hard to recognize them all. Let's see here. Molly says, True Crime, I just looked up river levels for Seven Bridges. It's 1 foot below minimum for flood currently and 7 feet higher this time last year than there was when there was a drought. Yes, I was up there a few weeks ago, and they had it closed off. It was gated, had to walk in once again, go back in there. And like I said, I visit to, of course, visit the memorial and, always try and just figure out what's going on. I speak to people that are locals up there that you go in there, and Ruckus will tell you, you'll see people back there fishing, cooking, camping out. And
I get all in their business too, don't I?
Yeah. He's never met a stranger. And so, and
hey, you guys related? You favor each other.
Hello, outside of the grid. Good to see you. Alan the Prowl. Mr. Stephen Ruckus walk into the bar.
Yeah. Well, you just missed it. I said, if I get in any trouble out in that way, I have a friend there that's a nurse. That went right over your head. I just kind of let that one go.
Molly says, True Crime, Ruckus to the box, laying neatly. Does that hint at more than one, or one perp came back and put them there? Well, the handling of 2 bikes, the abduction, the strangest thing to me is the tossing of the purse and the across the fence. That
just doesn't make sense.
It does not. That of anything shows staging, that they wanted that found, and why would they do that? Because if you did that in front of the children, and I believe they did, that the children would have reacted. But we did sound testing there. That interstate and highway is absolutely unbelievably loud from passing cars, motors, and even the terrain. And you can barely hear someone screaming at 200 or 300 feet. And most of those houses are far in excess of that. So that even if the girls were crying, you wouldn't more than likely hear it.
It's not remote, though, by any stretch. I mean, you go to the end of that choke point. This house is like right there, and this house is along the lake as well. But still, the way it's set up, I mean, it really deadens the sound in that area.
Curtis says, "What are your thoughts on this being a person who has some prior experience in at least abductions?" Absolutely. I believe it's a serial offender. And of course, are there other cases that might lead to this? And absolutely. Is there a possibility he's still active? Absolutely. Who knows? But and that's one of the things that drives us, for the fact that if there is an offender out there that's active, um, we have to do something. We have to try.
There was a serial offender in that area that got caught, and he had 2 girls with him and one escaped. Now, one of them didn't make it, and he decided he wasn't going back to prison either. He took care of that. But same kind of MO, which was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so few cases that the FBI has where a single offender abducts more than one child or 2 children at a time. It's so low that the stats on it, that it's such a rare case. And that individual who lived in that state had done it on 2 occasions.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, is he someone that is a suspect in this case? Absolutely. Pitbull Mom said, I love living by you guys.
Steve's almost in flame and arrow range.
Yes.
He's about to see what summer's like.
Ruckus rocks. Those videos you made of Drew and Elizabeth's birthdays were amazing. Absolutely. Y'all check those out. Unbelievable.
Yeah, please do. The anniversary is coming up, and fortunately, Steve and I can be there. And Drew told me that he reads all the comments that you guys leave on those videos. I've done a few interviews with him, and I think I've done 3 just on the case itself, trying to keep awareness going. If you let this stuff go away, it's not going to stop Steve and I from doing what we're doing. But it definitely helps when people keep it going, because you never know who knows something.
James, hey, Steve, do you think there's more than one person? Statistically, yes, there is more than one person. Is there more than one person that knows about this crime? Absolutely. Regardless if they were part of that day. I do think that there's people out there, family-wise or other, that would have seen the changes in the temperament or other things, as when you read these profiles, the interest that this type of offender would have played or would have shown in the following of the case. And these offenders do that. And so I will never say that I would be unsurprised if it was 2, and then same statement and same breath, I would say I wouldn't be surprised if it's just a single offender. We keep our eyes open in our in both directions. We don't close off one because we don't know all the facts. And even the FBI and law enforcement, they still be considering both a single and a more than one offender. What do you think, Ruckus?
I absolutely think it's more than one offender. Absolutely. Pitbull Mom, Evansdale is a small town like Delphi. It definitely is.
Does Ruckus like to play with dolls?
That's a loaded question. I'm not going to answer that. I can't win that one.
Yeah, you can. Your wife's a doll, so. Man, you're not a romantic. I am.
Oh.
Cindy says, do you think there is a benefit to releasing the cause of death after all this time? I've always hated that sometimes you'll see law enforcement take it to the grave, the facts and all the information, and they'll never release it. I wish they would, after a certain amount of time, say that, okay, there's nothing else we can do. And I hate that sometimes they won't release. Now, does law enforcement have the cause of death? I have no idea. So they haven't shared.
There's a couple looming questions too, as to were they taken immediately to Seven Bridges, or were they taken somewhere else first for a time? So there's a couple questions, and I'm going to see if I can address them on this trip. But sometimes you get roadblocks. Like I said, I don't want to aggravate anybody on purpose.
Yeah.
But there's a couple questions that I have that'll clear things up for me. And you and I have talked about this, Steve. You probably know what I'm talking about. That would make all the difference in the world to me. We can get those couple questions answered.
Do they have an idea who may have done this, like a favorite suspect? Law enforcement, they may absolutely have an idea. Of course, we can look at everyone that had some type of contact that day, as far as witnesses and otherwise that were in the area at critical times. And that, all those persons are on our list. But there's also, we have to look at, just like what happened with Delphi, out of nowhere came this unknown person that came out to be the one that is charged and facing the crime. Do I think that may well be the case in this? Absolutely. I go more towards that we're going to have an unknown that has some type of contact and knowledge of Seven Bridges and from that community. That's more my line of thoughts, that the offender is going to be from that part of the region.
Mm-hmm. And you have to consider too, they could have been abducted by a known person that they knew, and then somebody else got involved with it as well.
Hello, Redfoot. Mandaluk, good to see you. The girls knew they had to be back by a certain time. I expect so. But children being children, they rode around at the neighborhood, and then they asked directions to the park itself. And could someone at any point contacted them and asked them to go ride around, look for a child, a lost puppy, and got them off guard and got them to a location? There's so many different ways that these predators lure children into vulnerable spots. And could that be play a role in this? Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a perfect storm, Steve. They got to them in the perfect spot at the perfect time.
It's high risk, though, still. I mean,
sure,
in the middle
absolutely.
Of the day. Yeah. Are you going to Texas, Steve? Yes, not on this trip, though. I'll be going back to Texas. Got some other cases out there to look at.
He's got a fence to build down there at the bottom of Texas.
That's the only thing I haven't been involved in.
Yeah, I know, right?
Pitbull says Evanston is a small town like Delphi. Evansdale is no, it's you have Waterloo. My goodness, there's
a couple of small towns around there.
Yeah, they're all
you got Cedar Rapids. That's where I'm flying into. Waterloo. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, it's not really a small town. I don't know what the demographics of how many people live there. I have no idea. Molly says, do you think one or both the girls were familiar with the offender? Absolutely possible. And that's something that law enforcement, and more than likely, if you go by the stats, absolutely they knew who they were, or they had been targeted or seen.
Now, the initial, where they found the bikes, my initial thought would have been the water. I don't know about you, Steve, that, maybe they had gone in the water and had an accident or whatever.
And I think that was part of the thing that everyone thought originally, that was why it was, staged in such a manner and the bikes put there, because it could be that the bikes are truly just simply a dumping ground, but it's so close that it may have been that, or, we just don't know. Boston says, these creepy freaks that hurt little girls, why wouldn't someone turn in any evidence they might have on them? I'm so thankful Stephen Ruckus is working on this. Someone help them, please. Yes, but we've seen it time and time again that sometimes these people are in certain relationships, and you have this offender who is so dominant and so controlling that not always will these people that know of the crime willingly turn them in. And there's a name for it. I'm sure that there's some professionals in psychiatry and psychology that can tell you what that syndrome is. But sometimes these offenders are the dominant person within a household, and they control reality for some of these witnesses.
Yeah, they're at least narcissistic sociopaths. At least. Yeah.
Yeah, Molly, thank you. Pitbull, Evansdale is next to Cedar Rapids and Waterloo, is about 150K. Kurt Warner is from the area and played University of Iowa, which is in town. Also, John Wayne Gacy is from this community.
I just learned something new. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't forget to ask Drew about it. Drew actually knows some of his family.
Oh, no kidding. Me and Drew don't talk much. We don't get along very well.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
No.
Passing glance, hello. That's about it. Now, another thing, Steve, is the amount of travel time between the abduction and where they found the girls. That's way outside the national statistics.
Oh yes, it is, and it's oddity, and that shows you, and that leads more towards how can you control two children, unless there's some type of ruse that we're going to a certain location, or rather than just being a single offender.
Yeah, if you guys watch that video that I took of the drive there, and just imagine you've got to control two children for that drive. And I agree with Steve 100%. I believe whoever did this is from that area. They're familiar with that area, not so much Evansdale.
And Anna says, the fiend is some sort of criminal who would snatch little children from a yard when other family members are present. Sense of entitlement, no fear, driven by sick fantasy. And we see these offenders sometimes that the abduction part of it is part of their fantasy. And that the risk, we saw with the case of Ted Bundy. He did 2 abductions and on a popular beach that was highly, there was a large gathering of people and witnesses there that can play into this role. And I seen it myself in my career on a beach that had 100 people there where this individual tried to abduct a child in the water. Didn't work out for him, but
I love it when things happen.
Yeah, you get a bunch of Georgia rednecks together and you try to take a child from, it just doesn't work out. But
and not one of them had a firearm, I bet.
Fantasies. Do what, sir?
Not one of them had a firearm, I bet.
Not on the beach. Boys. They were. Now I'm sure if they went to the parking lot, but they didn't need them.
Don't let them get to their glove box.
How common is it 2 people could work together in an abduction? It seems so hard to believe, but I don't know. My prayers are with the families every day. And that's the thing is that even when you look at, and once again, we fall back to the Delphi, that we have these individuals that have these drop boxes, and you have an individual such as Klein that created these links where other offenders, and they share information, they catfish, they take advantage of our children. That there's so many people that work together, and it's sickening. But we can't think in the manner that these individuals do. That birds of a feather flock together, and they do. And I'm sure Ruckus can tell you that in the prison environment, that you have whole cell blocks that of individuals that never knew each other, but each of them looked for the exact same type of victim.
Absolutely.
Preyed upon the same type and same manner of these children. And it's just absolutely amazing that we have that in our society. But predators are predators of whatever drives them.
There was a high profile case from the late 70s, early 80s. These two guys met in prison and had a plan, and they started carrying it out. They didn't get to finish. They got caught. But how do you have those casual conversations, even in a prison setting? To have to share these sick ideals. It's crazy.
And this is a good point, Anna, where she says that the person, there was a phone in it. And there is a person of interest that served time with a well-known offender that took his life that Ruckus attempted to communicate with.
Oh, I did. He called me. He called me back.
But there is, taking that phone, separating it from the child, throwing it over the fence. Was that knowledge that he knew that there was a phone in there? And regardless if a phone has service or not, you can make 911 calls with them. I don't know what the charge on this phone was, but it was enough that she could play games on it.
I see your point, though. So he couldn't be tracked.
Yes.
That may have been exactly why they did it. And I wouldn't imagine a girl her age had a whole bunch in her purse either. Maybe she travels light like I do. I travel very light. I hardly have any products with me or anything like that.
Yeah, it took me 4 days to recover from carrying all your luggage. I actually have his luggage in my vehicle now, and I spent about 3 hours packing the van so that I can have room for my stuff.
You have to admit that was a pretty good idea.
Oh, yes. Does law enforcement follow the suspects, or is there just not enough people to do that? If they have information saying that this is a key person, they're going to bring the resources in. But it takes a certain amount of evidence that you can have a lot of persons of interest out there. And, of course, you never have enough manpower to cover all the persons of interest. But if you have critical information, linking it down, narrowing the scope to an individual, yes, they'll put the resources out there for that.
Sure. And this wasn't a burglary. This is a homicide. So they'll get the resources. I bet you that Kohlberger had 18 or 20 people following him across the country.
Yeah, he got stopped twice for following too closely, and we know how that works.
He didn't even try and bribe him. Oh, that was beautiful.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Help me.
Yeah. I'll help you do a citizen's arrest.
That was so funny.
Does anyone see a pop-up camper parked at Seven Bridges at that time? I don't know. There was someone that had went up there early on during the missing and had actually searched Seven Bridges, and that was brought. That information law enforcement knows about. That person said, I went up there and looked. But unless you go to the exact location, and we'll have some imagery and videos showing you what it looks like in the next few days of that area. And you'll see how, unless you go exactly to the location, you would never see the girls because it's extremely well, I don't know with the floods what it looks like now, but we'll know in a few days.
Our first trip out there, Steve, how many times did I get lost? You're like, what you doing over there? I said, oh, there you are. It's dense. Not as dense as I am, obviously. I can't go 50 feet without getting off the trail.
Yeah, Pitbull Mom says when they were Elizabeth and Lyric's ages, they go out on the bikes in the mornings and didn't come home till the street lights came on. And
it's a different time now.
Yep. Amelia Lavender, $10. Thanks for all you both do. Thank you. Appreciate your support. We'll be, like I said, using that in just a couple of days.
Yeah, Pitbull Mom, I am high maintenance. She said I sound high maintenance. Oh, that's funny. Well, I have to entertain myself for the first 3 hours of my day because Steve sleeps till about noontime. So I have to find something to do.
What's the picture of the person that did this to the girl's age, etc.? There's, of course, some of the cases I've looked at and worked on that we have to look at. It's not going to be any different than any of these other cases. That when the FBI gives a profile, they're going to give you an age range from the 20s all the way up until the 50s or 60s. It depends when this offender, how much background he has, time served, knowledge, how many victims are in his that he has possibly committed this type of crime to. But, and you can't get locked in on a certain age, because if you do, and we saw that with Delphi once again, you had where they were looking at an older individual to start with, and then 2 years in, they totally flip-flopped and came out with this young image. And then they said, well, it may be someone that looks much younger than what they are. And I never lock in on any certain age group, other than we know that they were of driving age, because they had to have a vehicle, owned a vehicle, and were able to transport the children within a certain timeline. And if you do the stats on that again, of course, the deaths of these girls would have been within a few hours that they would have been up there. So at least driving age all the way up to, 40 or 50 is what I would expect.
But the law enforcement had a lot of obstructions in their way. With the water so close, they had to consider that. Tracking dogs wouldn't have helped at all, because they're immediately, it appears, put into a vehicle and taken very far away. So they're behind the 8 ball to start with.
Let's see. Lori Lasone, you mean the profile? I'm not sure if one was ever released. Yes, there was one released on it, Molly. It's almost identical to the that they may change their appearance. They may speak about the crime. They may pay an abnormal amount of attention to this case. Speak about it constantly. May change their appearance before the fact that they don't know who may have witnessed them, things of that, change vehicles, things of all of that. But I think that's pretty typical, that if you read FBI's, that they pretty well do that time and time again. It's pretty generic.
And it's all over the place. I mean, you got your Ted Bundys, who are very social and active, and then you got your Kaczynskis that are recluses. It's anything in between. How many times have you heard this? Wow, he was my next door neighbor. I never would have guessed he would have done something.
Yeah, he was so helpful and kind.
Sure. Yeah, those cats are good.
Have you been lifting and prep, lifting weights and prep for carrying Ruckus's man bag, 3 steamer trunk, and now a walking stick? Now I've got a whole village of Sherpas that's going to assist me.
I'm prepared.
The soil out past the fence next to the water, could they get a cast of shoe prints there, Steve? I don't. It's extremely grassy, that area, that embankment, and at the time, I think I've looked at the images, and I can't remember. You're looking at in July, and I'm sure they would have checked for any type of shoe prints in the area, in case there was someone that was in the area under the guise of being a fisherman and waiting for the perfect moment. That's what I would have done in law enforcement, so I expect they would have done the same.
Just take sometimes one little thing to tie two pieces of evidence together that you couldn't tie together before. I've seen that many times.
Hello,
I've seen
sir.
the wrong
Good night.
person arrested on a homicide of a child. So you have to be careful with that as well. Ruin that man's life. And then come to find out it was the sheriff's nephew. You can believe that.
Wow, why SUV? Like to hear more about that. Yes, there's been several descriptions of not only of the SUV, or was it a Bronco, was it a Suburban, but there was even a sedan that was mentioned, plus other vehicles have come up in information that we've passed along to law enforcement. What about the rumors of there being a van seen where the bikes were found? Yes, there's all different types of vehicles that people go back and think about, and which are true and which are not.
And there's houses all along that road that if any one of them had a security camera or a ring camera, they would have been able to see those vehicles. It just wouldn't be eyewitness. They'd have video of it. And it's too bad too, Steve, because like these other areas we've been to, they're beautiful areas that are always going to be connected to these tragedies, which is too bad.
Teresa says Richard Allen lives within a mile of the area, with it being used to do a circumference around the point of abduction. Check all males in that area. Of course, the perp could be female too. Law enforcement, yes, they have a standard operating procedures, a plan of action of checking locations, certain type of offenders, the register offenders that would be associated with this type of crime, that they would do that on both ends, not only where the abduction, but where the recovery side is. That's pretty standard. And I know that there was a lot of agencies involved in this, and they would have covered those. And, you know, but we're still here now going, 13 years, 12 years, you see, 2012 to now. And so, you know, we're 2024 and still unsolved. And
I was amazed at how many of the SROs lived in the same general area up there as well. That was eye-opening for me as well. I mean, we know that there's a lot of them out there, and they have to register, and anybody can go online and see if they live in your neighborhood and stuff. But there was just an area where there was just a chunk of them, and I found that pretty interesting.
973 says, nothing prepares you about what can happen when your kid's daughter was attacked but survived. I'm
Thank
good
God
to hear that she survived. Sad that she was attacked. And yes, there's all different types of ruses that you could have that. There's nothing that says that it has to be two males. You're absolutely correct. A female could be involved just as much as anything. But anyway, we're looking forward to meeting with Drew, and we're looking forward to the memorial as far as bringing awareness to it. Sadly, that we're in this position that we're going to this location, and it's all related to a tragedy. But it's something that we feel is part and necessary of our lives, and that's what we wish to do. But if y'all have any advice, comments, suggestions, absolutely throw them in comments, send us emails, get in contact with us. And as Ruckus said, send him the comments that you wish for him to share. And we absolutely appreciate all y'all's support. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it, put it out there, because as our footprint gathers and gets bigger, we wish to help as many families as possible. And any closing words, Ruckus?
No, thanks for asking me to come on. I appreciate it. I always love coming on your channel. You know that. You've got a great subscriber base and member base. You guys are all fantastic. And you come to my channel and support me as well. You guys are great. Hopefully we'll get some good video this trip, and you'll get to see. I've been watching the comments, so there's some areas that I'm going to take some particular videos of so you guys can see those.
Al on the Prowl is going to come out looking for us.
Come on out. Now, I'm here to tell you,
appreciate it.
this
All
time,
right, guys.
when Steve picks you up at the airport, it's like jumping on a train. He just opens the sliding door. He doesn't even stop it. You have to throw your luggage in, then jump in. That's why I told him to take my luggage this time. So I can just jump in.
And then you forgot some of it.
Yeah.
That comes with old age. But
Thanks,
anyway,
guys.
we appreciate it. We'll see y'all soon in the coming days. We'll be doing some interviews with Drew, and look forward to seeing y'all soon, guys. Stay safe out there.